One person jumped from the letter H of the world's most recognized sign. Another left behind words saying, "I'm tired of living." Some swallowed pills. Others used guns on themselves. Many simply vanished until it was too late to help them. They were famous, sought after, and given awards. But at the end, no one clapped for them. They faced locked doors, bare rooms, and departures nobody witnessed. The movie industry turned them into famous people, then let them drop one after another without making a sound. Marie Prevost, the silent star silenced by sound. Marie Prevost embodied the carefree flapper era of 1920s Hollywood. Canadian-born with delicate features and expert comic timing, she rose from Mack Sennett bathing beauty to genuine star in sophisticated comedies like Ernst Lubitsch's The Marriage Circle. F. Scott Fitzgerald reportedly used her as inspiration for a character in his fiction. At her peak, she earned $1,500 weekly, a substantial sum in the pre-Depression era, and lived accordingly, with a Beverly Hills mansion and lavish wardrobe. Then came sound. While not impossible for her, the transition proved difficult. Her slight French-Canadian accent wasn't severe, but it didn't match her established screen persona. More significantly, changing audience tastes and studio politics relegated her to supporting roles by the early 1930s. The decline of her career coincided with personal tragedies. Her mother's death in a car accident and a divorce from actor Kenneth Harlan. Depression led to drinking, which led to weight gain, creating a vicious cycle in an industry obsessed with appearance. Roles diminished further. Financial problems mounted. By 1934, she was bankrupt. She continued working in increasingly minor parts to support herself, but alcoholism had firmly taken hold. On January 21, 1937, her body was discovered in her modest apartment after neighbors noticed her small dachshund's distressed barking. She had been dead for several days at age 38. The coroner determined the cause was acute alcoholism combined with malnutrition. The press, always eager for since-forgotten stars, the dark side of fame. One person jumped from the letter H of the world's most recognized sign. Another left behind words saying, "I'm tired of living." Some swallowed pills. Others used guns on themselves. Many simply vanished until it was too late to help them. They were famous, sought after, and given awards. But at the end, no one clapped for them. They faced locked doors, bare rooms, and departures nobody witnessed. The movie industry turned them into famous people, then let them drop one after another without making a sound. Peg Entwistle, the dreamer who never got her chance. Peg Entwistle arrived in Hollywood in 1932, carrying a suitcase filled with theater credentials and dreams bigger than the California sky. At 24, she already possessed what many aspiring actresses lacked: genuine stage experience, a voice that commanded attention, and a presence that lingered in memory. Her journey from London to Broadway to Hollywood seemed destined for success, following the classic path of so many who became legends. But Hollywood proved cruelly indifferent. Despite her undeniable talent, she secured only a minor role in 13 Women, most of which ended up on the cutting room floor. Months passed. Her savings dwindled. Auditions led nowhere. Phone calls went unreturned. The silence from studios became deafening as depression took hold. On September 16th, she made her final journey up the winding path to the Hollywood sign, then reading Hollywoodland. She climbed the maintenance ladder on the letter H, stood briefly at its summit, taking in the glittering city that had rejected her, and jumped. In her purse, a note read, "I fear being afraid. I apologize for everything." The bitter irony came days later when a letter arrived offering her the lead role in a play about a young woman who commits suicide. Like so many Hollywood stories, recognition came too late. Peg Entwistle's tragic end at the very symbol of Hollywood dreams transformed her into something she never wanted to be. Not a star of the screen, but a cautionary tale of broken hopes. Lupe Velez, the Volcano Girl. Lupe Velez burst onto Hollywood screens in the 1920s with an energy that couldn't be contained by conventional roles or expectations. Born in Mexico, she brought a fiery passion to every performance, earning her the nickname the Mexican Spitfire, and later the Volcano Girl. Her temper was legendary, her wit razor-sharp, and her beauty captivating. Unlike the reserved actresses of her era, Lupe spoke her mind, lived loudly, and refused to play by Hollywood's suffocating rules. She starred opposite Douglas Fairbanks, worked with Cecil B. DeMille, and created her own successful comedy series. Her romantic life became tabloid fodder, tempestuous relationships with Gary Cooper, John Gilbert, and her brief, volatile marriage to Johnny Weissmuller. The press adored her unpredictability, at least until it wasn't entertaining anymore. When she became pregnant by a small-time actor in 1944, unmarried and facing career ruin, the freedom she had always embodied became a liability. The gossip, judgment, and isolation proved too much. On December 14th, she arranged her bedroom with careful attention: flowers, candles, silk sheets. She wrote a note, dressed in her finest, and took an overdose of sleeping pills. What should have been the end of a tragic story became something worse. The press transformed her death into a vulgar joke involving a bathroom accident, a falsehood that persisted for decades. The medical examiner's report told a different story. She died with the same dramatic intention she brought to life. Lupe Velez wasn't a punchline. She was a woman who lived and died refusing to compromise. George Sanders, the man who was simply bored. George Sanders possessed everything Hollywood considered essential for success: British sophistication, sardonic wit, and a voice that could turn even mundane lines into verbal silk. His career spanned decades, from Rebecca to The Picture of Dorian Gray, to his Oscar-winning role as the acerbic critic Addison DeWitt in All About Eve. He even voiced Shere Khan in Disney's The Jungle Book, lending menacing elegance to the animated tiger. Behind his polished exterior and cutting remarks lurked a profound world-weariness. Despite his success, or perhaps because of it, Sanders found little joy in his achievements. His marriages to Zsa Gabor and her sister Magda ended in divorce. His health began to decline. Roles became scarcer as he aged. The constant performance of being George Sanders, both on and off screen, had become exhausting. In April 1972, at age 65, he checked into a hotel near Barcelona, swallowed 5 bottles of Nembutal, and left behind what may be the most eerily composed suicide note in Hollywood history. Dear world, I am leaving because I am bored. I have lived long enough. I am leaving you with your worries in this sweet cesspool. Good luck. There was no desperation in his final act, just the same cool detachment that had characterized his finest performances. For Sanders, life had simply ceased to be interesting enough to continue. He made his exit with the same elegant precision with which he had delivered his most cutting lines. Carol Landis, the woman who waited too long. Carol Landis rose from chorus girl to star with remarkable speed in the late 1930s. Her blonde beauty graced over 50 films, earning her the nickname the Ping Girl and the Chest from studios eager to capitalize on her looks. But beneath the publicity photos and glamorous premieres was a woman of surprising depth. She learned multiple languages, wrote a well-received book about her USO tours during World War II, and possessed an intelligence the industry largely ignored. Her personal life became defined by a secret affair with married actor Rex Harrison. For years, he dangled promises of divorce and marriage, creating a future just out of reach. Landis, who had already endured 3 failed marriages by age 29, invested everything in this relationship, emotionally and publicly, despite Hollywood's warnings. On July 4, 1948, she prepared an elaborate dinner at her Pacific Palisades home for Harrison. When he failed to arrive, she wrote a note, took a lethal dose of Seconal, and lay down on her bed. Harrison discovered her body the next morning, but waited hours before calling her maid, who then called police. Precious time spent allegedly removing evidence of their relationship. The press labeled it accidental, another Hollywood excess. Harrison attended neither her funeral nor the inquest, returning to his wife Lily Palmer within days. Carol Landis died waiting for a tomorrow that would never have come, her note containing the resigned realization that some promises are never meant to be kept. Charles Boyer, the husband who couldn't stay behind. Charles Boyer embodied continental charm for American audiences across 5 decades in cinema. The French actor with the mesmerizing gaze and velvet voice created unforgettable characters in classics like Gaslight and Love Affair. While Hollywood cast him as the quintessential romantic lead, wooing actresses like Ingrid Bergman and Olivia de Havilland on screen, his real-life devotion belonged to one woman alone, his wife, Pat. Their marriage defied Hollywood statistics, spanning 44 years without scandal or separation. In an industry where relationships were often strategic and temporary, theirs was a genuine partnership. They had one son, Michael, who died by suicide at 21 after a difficult breakup. A tragedy the couple weathered together, their bond perhaps strengthened in shared grief. When Pat was diagnosed with cancer in 1978, Boyer became her constant caregiver, rarely leaving her side through treatments and decline. After her death on August 24, 1978, he appeared calm, making necessary arrangements with quiet dignity. 2 days later, at age 78, he took a fatal dose of barbiturates while staying at a friend's home in Phoenix. He left no explanatory note. None was needed. Friends said he had often remarked that he couldn't imagine life without Pat. Some called it the ultimate romantic gesture. Others saw it as the final act of a man who had completed his purpose. For Boyer, the narrative was clear. His story ended when hers did. In an industry built on pretense, their love was perhaps the most authentic role he ever played. Maggie McNamara, the woman who didn't fit the pattern. Maggie McNamara's arrival in Hollywood seemed to herald a new kind of female star. With delicate features and intelligent eyes, she projected a sophisticated vulnerability that set her apart from the bombshells of the early 1950s. Her first film role in The Moon is Blue earned her an Academy Award nomination and instant controversy. The film dared to use words like virgin and pregnant, resulting in condemnation from the Catholic Legion of Decency. McNamara seemed poised for a brilliant career. Critics praised her refreshing naturalness and captivating presence. She followed with promising roles in 3 Coins in the Fountain and Prince of Players. Then, almost as quickly as she had appeared, she vanished from screens. What happened remains something of a mystery. Some suggest she was too intellectual, too unwilling to play the studio game. Others point to her refusal to conform to Hollywood's expectations of female stars. Whatever the combination of reasons, by 1956, major roles had dried up. She shifted to television, appearing occasionally in series like Alfred Hitchcock Presents, but these opportunities also eventually disappeared. By the 1960s, she was working as a typist in New York, living in a modest apartment and reportedly writing screenplays that never sold. On February 10, 1978, at age 49, she took an overdose of sleeping pills. A note nearby contained religious reflections. Her passing warranted only a brief mention in industry papers. A few sentences for a woman once proclaimed as Hollywood's most promising newcomer. She died alone, her Oscar nomination a distant memory, her potential largely unrealized. Brian Keith, the reliable actor everyone forgot. Brian Keith's face was instantly recognizable to generations of moviegoers and television viewers, even if his name didn't always come to mind. His career spanned nearly 5 decades, encompassing everything from westerns like The Violent Men to family comedies like The Parent Trap to his role as Uncle Bill in the long-running sitcom Family Affair. He worked alongside stars from Rock Hudson to Elizabeth Taylor, always delivering solid, unpretentious performances that made everyone around him look better. Keith embodied a certain kind of masculinity on screen, straightforward, tough but fair, reliable. Off-screen, he was a decorated Marine who served in World War II, a father of 10 children, several adopted, and a professional who showed up prepared and drama-free. He was the antithesis of the temperamental star, which perhaps explains why greater fame eluded him despite his consistent work. In his final years, multiple tragedies struck. His daughter Daisy died by suicide in 1997. Shortly afterward, Keith was diagnosed with lung cancer that spread to his brain. Facing excruciating pain, mounting medical bills, and diminishing work prospects at age 75, he made a decision. On June 24, 1997, at his home in Malibu, he ended his life with a gunshot. Unlike many Hollywood deaths, there was no scandal, no mystery, just the quiet, determined act of a man who had always faced reality head-on. Even in death, Keith received less attention than flashier stars, though he had given audiences far more of himself over his long career. His passing reflected his life, solid, unadorned, and underappreciated. William Frawley, the man with perfect timing. William Frawley created one of television's most beloved characters as Fred Mertz in I Love Lucy, his cantankerous neighbor persona bringing laughter to millions. Behind the scenes, Frawley's journey to that iconic role had been long and winding. Born in 1887, he began in vaudeville, transitioned to Broadway, and worked steadily in Hollywood for decades before television made him a household name at age 64. His gruff exterior wasn't entirely an act. Colleagues described him as difficult, quick-tempered, and fond of alcohol, traits that limited his career despite his undeniable talent. His I Love Lucy co-star Vivian Vance so disliked working with him that her contract specified she would never have to appear in a spin-off with Frawley. Yet when the cameras rolled, his timing was impeccable, his delivery flawless. The official record states that Frawley died of a heart attack in 1966 after attending a movie. He collapsed on Hollywood Boulevard and was found by a passerby. He was 79 years old. However, some who knew him well have suggested his death might not have been entirely accidental. Close friends spoke of concerning statements he had made, of a deepening depression as roles became scarce and health problems mounted. The truth remains elusive, but the pattern is familiar. An aging performer facing the industry's indifference, struggling with physical decline and diminishing relevance. Whether his heart simply gave out or he hastened its failure somehow. Frawley's end came as his professional opportunities were fading, the curtain falling on a career built on perfect timing. Judy Garland, the girl who couldn't be herself. From her first appearance in The Wizard of Oz, Judy Garland belonged to America. Her voice could convey both childlike wonder and profound heartbreak, often in the same song. Behind the rainbow, however, was a young woman systematically broken by the very industry that celebrated her. MGM executives put the teenage Garland on amphetamines to control her weight and barbiturates to help her sleep, beginning a lifelong battle with addiction before she was old enough to understand its consequences. The studio controlled everything. Her appearance, they even altered her teeth and nose. Her weight, her relationships, even the narrative that she was an ugly duckling compared to other MGM stars. This psychological manipulation exacerbated her insecurities and created the crippling stage fright that would haunt her throughout her career. Even as she delivered remarkable performances in films like A Star is Born, her personal struggles intensified. Her 5 marriages, financial troubles, and increasingly erratic behavior became fodder for the gossip columns that once adored her. When she could no longer deliver reliable performances, the studios discarded her. Television offered brief resurrections, but these opportunities also eventually disappeared as her reliability decreased. On June 22, 1969, at just 47, she was found dead in her London bathroom from an accidental overdose of barbiturates. The coroner noted the cause was an incautious self-overdosage, and that the amount in her system was accumulated over time, not taken all at once. The tragic end result of decades of substance abuse that began when she was just a child under Hollywood's care. She died $4 million in debt, her extraordinary talent exploited and then abandoned by an industry that treated her as a commodity rather than a human being. Barbara Payton, the bombshell who chose poorly. Barbara Payton's Hollywood trajectory represents one of the industry's most precipitous falls. Arriving in Los Angeles in 1948, the stunning blonde was quickly signed by Universal Studios. Her beauty opened doors, and her uninhibited personality initially charmed producers. Within 2 years, she was co-starring with James Cagney in Kiss Tomorrow Goodbye, and seemed destined for stardom. Then came the scandals that would define and ultimately destroy her career. Her tumultuous love triangle with actors Franchot Tone and Tom Neal became tabloid gold when Neal beat Tone so severely he was hospitalized with a broken nose, cheekbone, and brain concussion. Payton married Tone after the incident, only to leave him for Neal 53 days later. Studios, still image-conscious in the early 1950s, quickly dropped her. What followed was a breathtaking descent. By 1955, she was appearing in forgettable B-movies. By 1960, she was arrested for prostitution on Sunset Boulevard. By 1962, she was living on Skid Row, her once celebrated beauty ravaged by alcohol and hard living. Former colleagues barely recognized the woman who had once commanded $10,000 per week. On May 8, 1967, she was found dead in her parents' San Diego home. She was 39 years old. The cause was heart and liver failure, her body simply worn out from years of substance abuse and hardship. In the span of less than 2 decades, Barbara Payton had gone from Hollywood contract player to cautionary tale. Her fall documented by police mugshots instead of studio portraits. Her autobiography, published shortly before her death, was tellingly titled, "I Am Not Ashamed," though the industry that had once celebrated her certainly wanted her forgotten. Jackie Coogan, the child star with no future. Jackie Coogan became America's first major child star when Charlie Chaplin featured him in The Kid in 1921. His expressive eyes and natural talent made him an international sensation by age 7. He earned millions during the silent era, approximately $4 million by today's standards, starring in film after successful film. Merchandise bearing his image sold worldwide, and his bobbed haircut became the style for children across America. As he outgrew child roles, however, the industry's interest waned. The awkward adolescent years were unkind professionally, and the transition to adult roles proved difficult. Then came a devastating personal blow. Upon turning 21, Coogan discovered his mother and stepfather had spent nearly all his earnings, which, under California law at that time, belonged to his parents. His subsequent lawsuit brought attention to the exploitation of child performers, but recovered only a small fraction of his fortune. Coogan served in World War II, then struggled to rebuild his career. Television eventually provided steady work, most notably as Uncle Fester in The Addams Family. Behind the ghoulish makeup, few recognized the child who had once been Hollywood's most bankable star. Though Coogan died of natural causes in 1984 at age 69, his legacy is one of exploitation and loss. The Coogan Law, passed in response to his case, now protects a portion of child performers' earnings in trust accounts. For Coogan himself, however, the protection came too late. His story established the template for countless child stars who followed: early fame, adult obscurity, and the struggle to define an identity apart from childhood success that has prematurely peaked. Tom Neal, the villain who became his role. Tom Neal seemed destined for conventional Hollywood success in the early 1940s. Handsome, athletic, a former collegiate boxing champion, and capable in both comedies and dramas, he appeared in dozens of films and seemed on the cusp of bigger roles. Then came Detour, the 1945 film noir that would define both his career and, eerily, foreshadow his life's dark turn. In this cult classic, Neal played Al Roberts, a pianist whose life spirals into violence and doom through a series of fateful encounters. The film's nihilistic tone and Neal's convincing portrayal of a man trapped by circumstance resonated with post-war audiences. What viewers couldn't know was how closely art would imitate life. The Barbara Payton love triangle, in which Neal severely beat actor Franchot Tone, effectively ended his mainstream film career. Studios dropped him, and he was relegated to Poverty Row Productions. His volatile temper, once confined to private outbursts, increasingly defined his public image. After several tumultuous relationships, he married receptionist Gail Evatt in 1960. In April 1965, Evatt was found dead from a gunshot wound to the back of her head. Neal claimed it was an accident during a struggle over the weapon. Prosecutors disagreed, and he was convicted of involuntary manslaughter, serving 6 years in prison. Released in 1971, he tried to rebuild his life as a landscaper in North Hollywood. On August 7, 1972, Neal died of heart failure at age 58. While officially natural causes, many who knew him believed it was the culmination of a life that had become as bleak and inescapable as the fate of his most famous character. The line between Tom Neal and Al Roberts had long since blurred, the actor becoming as trapped as the character who made him famous. Marie Prevost, the silent star silenced by sound. She was a silent film star, a symbol of sophistication, a familiar face in romantic comedies. But when sound came to movies, her accent and style no longer fit. The studio stopped calling. The fans stopped remembering. She fell into alcoholism, lost all her money, and lived alone in a modest apartment with her dog as her only friend. In 1937, she was found dead. She had been gone for days. The press, unusually cruel, focused on the detail that the dog had survived by eating her body. But behind the shocking headlines was a simple truth. She died forgotten by the very system that had used her until the last scene. Her story shows how technological change can leave people behind, how quickly what made someone special can become what makes them obsolete. Gig Young, the Oscar winner with a dark side. An Academy Award winner for They Shoot Horses, Don't They? Respected, elegant, flawless in front of the camera. But away from the set, darkness followed him. Chronic alcoholism, multiple failed marriages, wild mood changes. In 1978, newly married to his fifth wife, he was found dead beside her in their home. He had shot her at close range, then turned the gun on himself. He left no explanation, just a scene impossible to match with the image Hollywood had sold for decades. He was a brilliant actor, but also a man who fell apart while no one noticed or wanted to see. His story forces us to confront the gap between public image and private reality. How someone can seem to have everything while secretly losing everything that matters. Dana Plato, the child star's second fall. Though best known for her work on 1980s television, her story echoed the painfully familiar pattern of old Hollywood. A child star used and forgotten. After different strokes, the roles vanished. She turned to drugs, robbed a video store, was arrested, and became a media spectacle, a lost cause in the public eye. In an interview, she said she was trying to change to get something back, but no one believed her. She died of an overdose in a borrowed trailer at just 34. A year later, her son took his own life. Her ending wasn't shocking. It was a collective failure to help. Her story shows how the cycle repeats itself across generations of Hollywood, how the same patterns of rise and fall play out with different faces. The entertainment world has always been built on dreams, both making them and selling them. For every success story that makes the headlines, countless others end in quiet despair. The bright lights of fame can cast the darkest shadows. What connects these stories isn't just how they ended, but what came before. The pressure to be perfect, the demand to be whatever others wanted, the way the system used them until they were used up, then discarded them for newer models. These weren't just famous people who lost their way. They were human beings crushed by a machine that promised them everything and often left them with nothing, not even their sense of self.